This is the CitizenLink Report.
If you find our insights helpful, would you support our video efforts? Your gift of $25 or more goes a long ways. Covers the crew, lights, cameras, all that. Just click on Donate. Thanks from all of us. The White House says it's got a new version of the religious exemption under Obamacare. We'll talk about who's in and who's out. This is the CitizenLink Report. I'm Stuart Shepard along with Bruce Hausknecht, who follows the courts for us. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, Stuart.
The White House has a tradition, a long-standing history of saying that we're going to fix a problem. We've got a new solution, and then they come out and announce pretty much what they already had in place and just try to play it up. Did they do that again?
Yes, they've done it again. On the 1st of February, the Health and Human Services Department of the federal government issued a religious accommodation proposal. It's open for public comment, but essentially what it was supposed to do is take care of all the complaints from last year that argued that requiring employers to provide contraceptives and possible abortion-causing drugs in their health plans was going to force people to violate their religious conscience.
Right.
So the administration said, okay, trust us, we will come up with an accommodation. And so the revised proposal came out on the 1st, and, well, it's pretty much the same old, same old.
One has to ask, if there's really no significant change here, why do it at all?
Well, there are dozens of lawsuits which are the reason. In several of those lawsuits, the Department of Justice that's arguing the case on behalf of the administration promised the court that they were coming up with a religious accommodation to take care of all of these lawsuits on behalf of religious universities, et cetera. And so this is almost a requirement that they come up with something.
Yeah.
And so, and dutifully, the liberal press is already calling this an advancement for religious liberty. It is not.
Let's talk about the change that they did make. What is different about where we are now than where we were?
They've added something to supposedly take care of the objections of religious nonprofits like universities, Christian universities, or Catholic charities, or any type of nonprofit religious entity that is not a church.
Right.
Churches were exempted. These religious nonprofits were never given anything. This time they've been given a so-called accommodation, which is not an exemption. It basically says if you can raise an objection, we will use this accounting gimmick so that you won't feel as if your religious conscience is being violated by having to provide objectionable abortion-causing drugs in your health plans.
And let's spell this out just a bit. We have two categories here, essentially. There are Protestant groups and Catholic groups. Part of Catholic teaching is the contraception is not something that a good Catholic would do, if you will. It's part of their teaching, and they're opposed to abortion in any form. And some of the drugs that are covered under this could have the impact of causing abortion, and sometimes do. We also have Protestant evangelical groups that oppose the abortion part of that and don't want any drugs included in their health care plan that might cause abortion. So that's what we're talking about here, but the accommodation, as I understand it, still says they have to provide the drugs that they object to. Am I right about that?
Yes, exactly right. It's you as a nonprofit religious organization providing a service, which is a health plan to your employees. And because of that health plan, your employees will still be getting possible abortion-causing drugs, just from a different corner of the piece of paper that says, you know, we're covering this. It's an accounting gimmick, nothing more, nothing less. And it's probably not going to appease all of the institutions that have sued the federal government. And this does absolutely nothing for-profit companies at all.
And was what I was going to ask you about next. This is about a First Amendment right. In fact, the very first right spelled out in the very First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, it says that Congress shall make no law that goes against the free exercise of religion, which has to do with being a Christian or of another faith out in the public square. The government's not interpreting it that way. It says, okay, you get religious freedom, but if you happen to run a business, sorry, the First Amendment doesn't apply here.
Right. Where does it say that the federal government gets to pick which entities are entitled to First Amendment protections? It's unheard of. And with this whole mandate, we've got the government saying some people or some institutions are completely exempt. Some people can have an accommodation. Some institutions and for-profit businesses get nothing at all. In effect, picking and choosing who the First Amendment applies to.
Now, there are all these suits. We got more than 40 out there that are in play. What happens to those under this new scheme that the White House has come up with?
Well, several, if not more than several, of those lawsuits were dismissed last year at the request of the federal government because this so-called accommodation was coming. And that,
as was the election, we should point out, just on the calendar, it was ahead in the future.
Yes, we can't forget that. That was very significant in the timing of all this. However, because of the way this accommodation came out, or was promised to come out, a bunch of these lawsuits were dismissed. Now that we can look in black and white at what this accommodation is going to look like, all of these entities can go back into court and say, here's what the final thing is going to look like. And now we still reassert that this is a violation of the First Amendment, a violation of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and therefore we should not have to comply.
And of course, the for-profit corporations that are out there essentially got nothing. So they're left with a very simple decision: either betray your faith or acquire fines from the government, taxes as they were described under the decision that the Supreme Court had, that would literally put them out of business. They can't afford to operate. So it's either your faith or your business.
That's right. And these are not corporations like General Motors. These are family-run companies where these families have gotten together and said, we're going to run our business for the glory of God under these principles found in the Bible or whatever particular faith they belong to. And to think that they cannot run a business that way, according to the federal government, given what our Constitution and the First Amendment says, is just outrageous.
Because essentially it says you have a First Amendment right until you start a business, and then it's gone.
Right. And the First Amendment, of course, does not say that. It's a right that goes with you no matter where you are in society.
And that's why even the groups that are covered under the accommodation are still engaged in this fight, because if some people don't have a First Amendment right, eventually none of us will.
Right. We're engaged in one of the key battles for religious freedom that we've had in the last 20 years.
All right. Bruce, thank you for keeping up with this. Appreciate your insights.
Sure.
And thank you for watching. We always appreciate hearing from you. You may write to us at mail@citizenlink.com. We read every note that comes in. Don't always get a chance to respond to all of them, but we do appreciate hearing from you, your questions, your comments, your concerns. We encourage you to pray for our elected officials, but especially the members of the courts, the judges who will be deciding these 40-some cases that are making their way through, as well as the 9 justices of the Supreme Court who likely will make the ultimate decision on whether our First Amendment really means what it says it means. And remember, stand tall and be heard.